Before the sanctions, European markets were the final destination of up to 1/5 of Iran's petrochemical products, bringing in $2.5 billion worth of revenue for the country each year. But ongoing sanctions hampered the industry's ability to sell its products to the West. With the suspension of international sanctions on Iran's petrochemical exports in recent months, the political obstacles have been removed for Iran and those countries that want to enhance their trade relations with this energy superpower. The government's determination to privatize the country's petrochemical industry can be considered a major undertaking and overhaul. Hundreds of companies, big and small, have been established, bent on producing a greater volume of petrochemical products in a more cost-effective way. This has meant that Iranian factories are now able to purchase the raw materials they need inside the country and can no longer be affected by Western sanctions. Currently, countries like the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Greece and Romania have opened their doors once again to Iran's petrochemical products. Hassan Khosrow-Jerdi, the head of Iran's syndicate of oil, gas and petrochemical products exporters, which is one of Iran's most wealthy entities after the government, explains.
Thankfully, in the first 3 months of this year, petrochemical sales went up 20%. We don't have the figures for the 3 months after that, but based on the information we get from petrochemical companies, we expect sales to have gone up between 18 and 22%, meaning roughly 20% again. Recently, trade with European markets has gone up thankfully, and we've been having new customers from Europe as well. Last year, we were given more free rein for the sale of petrochemicals too. The combination of these two has meant an increase in sales.
But Europe is not the only market for Iran's petrochemical products. Export figures show steady growth in Iran's petrochemical industry in previous years. These products account for over 40% of its non-oil exports, bringing in revenue of $3.5 billion for the country. To find out more, we went to the Iran National Petrochemical Industry Company. There we spoke to the Deputy Oil Minister.
We have a production capacity of 60 million tons. We have produced 40 million tons of that already. 27 million tons of that was products that can be sold. 14 million tons of it was export products that have been shipped out of the country, bringing in $10 million. $10 million worth has been sold inside the country too. So $20 billion has been made from the sale of petrochemical products.
Iran's goal is to expand its presence in overseas markets by producing high-quality products at competitive prices. Having huge reserves of oil and gas and access to free waters means Iran has all it needs to achieve that goal. The 9th Iran Plast exhibition was held from the 25th to the 29th of September, and the focus of this year's event was polymer products. All the country's petrochemical companies were there. The exhibition was an excellent opportunity for us to talk to some of the CEOs there. One of the things we wanted to know was how much advantage Iran has over other countries when it comes to producing and exporting such products.
We don't have to pay much for labour, land and water. Utilities in general are cheaper in our country. All these are to our advantage. Our gas and oil products are good quality and in ample supply. The petrochemical products we are producing are rare and very expensive in other places, and this is what gives us an advantage over other suppliers.
The Strait of Hormuz in the southeastern coast of Iran is an important route for oil exports from Iran and other Persian Gulf countries. In 2013, an estimated 7 million barrels of crude oil and oil products was shipped through it every day. It is an undeniable fact that Iran relies heavily on the oil industry when it comes to achieving sustainable development. The present and future of Iran's economy depends to a great extent on this industry. That's why taking full advantage of oil and gas reserves is a top priority.
توجه به حوزه نفت و گاز
The leader has stressed the need for us to stop selling oil in crude form as part of the economic resistance plan. I think this is very important. We have to stop selling oil unprocessed. We can't stop selling crude oil altogether, but a percentage of it has to be reserved for making petrochemicals with.
Although crude exports can be a stopgap solution to the country's economic problems, relying on them is likely to do more harm than good in the long run.
Selling oil in crude form means forfeiting much bigger revenues. We lose out on the money that can be made from processing that oil and selling the petrochemical products that can come out of it. Instead, our crude oil consumers make that money. If we process our own oil, we won't have to sell so much crude to other countries. When you have resources, you have to have the manufacturing capabilities to process them if you want to exploit them fully. A kilo of raw material might cost $2, but it costs much more after being concentrated or processed. In other words, you exploit resources fully when you process them.
Export restrictions on crude oil and injecting more money into downstream industries, particularly petrochemicals, can pave the way for more non-oil exports and therefore more added value.
We're using 5% of the country's hydrocarbon resources to produce 40 million tons worth of petrochemical products. That 40 million tons brings in $20 billion. If we're exploiting those resources fully, we would be making $400 billion. In any given year, we have never made that much money from selling our oil. All our gas and oil sales put together have never exceeded $100 billion in a single year. That said, the petrochemicals we're now selling will be processed again and turned into even more products. So see just how valuable the petrochemical industry is for our country.
A lot of our oil is being sold in crude form. Our customers are processing that crude oil and then selling the refined products back to us. Hopefully we will expand and empower our petrochemical industry and supply our industries with the products they need ourselves.
Over the past few years, Iran has expanded its refining capacity to meet growing domestic demand, particularly for gasoline. Statistics show that Iran's primary energy consumption has grown by more than 50% over the past 10 years. In 2012, natural gas and oil accounted for almost all Iran's total primary energy consumption, with marginal contributions from coal, hydropower, nuclear and non-hydro renewables. At the exhibition, we asked the CEO of the Qadir Petrochemical Company about development projects the industry has on the agenda.
Mahshar and Asaluye are our main petrochemical hubs right now. Chabahar is also coming along. These three locations are hosting our petrochemical industry. A lot of the infrastructure is now up and running in Mahshar and Asaluye. We have 63 development plans on the agenda that will hopefully in the coming years come to fruition with the help of the government and the private sector.
Now that the international attitude toward Iran has changed, it's a no-brainer that the country's oil production will increase significantly. That said, to make money, you have to spend money. The oil and gas network has to be expanded for domestic use and exporting purposes. To sustain domestic consumption and meet increasing future export obligations, various phases of the South Pass gas field in Asalouye have to be developed. Numerous petrochemical plants must also be established in Imam Khomeini port. In short, a lot needs to be done, and to get the ball rolling, large investment is needed.
The companies from those countries that support the sanctions, like the US and European countries, want to invest and enter into talks and negotiations, but are just standing around waiting to see what happens. Those companies, whose capital is outside their own borders, do trade with Iranian companies, but there are no well-known major international companies between them. They are smaller companies with modest money, $200 million or $300 million. We encourage these companies to work